What? Smoking all my dragons, divine, righteous, almighty, greats, overachieving, never slacking. I am back with another Thomas Sowell reaction. We got the real reason why Asians are more successful than Westerners. And we're going to hop right into this. This will go on my history slash discussions playlist. Binge watch that if you're new to the channel. Original link in the description. Here we go.
Now, what about family structure, Tom? Again, I'm quoting you. Most black children were being raised in two-parent families in 1960. 30 years after the liberal welfare state, the great majority of black children were being raised by single parents.
Yes.
How does that, by the way, we should note that Patrick Moynihan publishes the Moynihan Report in 1965.
Yes.
And he's alarmed because the illegitimacy rate among black families is 25% then. Now, among whites, it's over a third.
Yes.
Hispanics, it's over half. And among African Americans, it's over 70%. What's going on there?
Well, this is, again, this too, you find the same thing in Britain, you find it in France and Norway, you find it in the Western world. In fact,
The dissolution of the family structure.
Oh, yeah, there are any number of Western nations where 40% of the children are raised with only one parent.
Right.
At the extremes, compared to Asian countries, at the extremes, Iceland, it's 2 out of 3 children born are raised in a single-parent home. In South Korea, it's 1 out of 66.
Wow. Wow. And so that's the welfare state?
Yes.
It is.
Oh, you're paying. You're creating a situation where if the first of all, you're creating a situation where if the man stays there, the government will not give the woman welfare, and if he leaves, it will. And so they're paying. When you pay people not to get married, more people don't get married.
Right. Right. Okay. So
Simple. Simple.
what would have happened if Lyndon Johnson, instead of becoming a liberal, had remained a crusty, tough, skeptical Texas conservative,
Yes.
which is certainly the way he started his career. If Lyndon Johnson had embraced the constrained vision instead of instituting the war on poverty and the Great Society and so forth, what would the country look like today?
A lot better. You would not have the same rates for crime and so on. Because you see, you can't have a welfare state in a democratic country unless you first have a welfare state vision. And when you buy all the assumptions of that vision, then you're buying a lot of trouble. One of the episodes I think epitomized it was in France in this case. That there were knife attacks by various people from North Africa against Chinese people in some suburb of Paris. And one of the things that the attackers said, that why are you attacking the Chinese? And it wasn't because of anything the Chinese had done to them. He said, they have nice clothes and big cars. That's not fair. I mean, that's, egalitarianism as a philosophy is one thing, but the actual consequences of it mean things like resenting other people's good fortune.
Right. All right. So one response to the gap, again, I return to this gap between African Americans and other Americans, affirmative action.
Yes.
Which brings us back to your alma mater, Harvard. According to
I'll never live it down.
You'll never live it down, yes. You once told me that the principal benefit of a Harvard degree was never again having to be impressed by anybody who had a Harvard degree. Is that right?
Absolutely.
All right. So these are figures that were published in the Harvard Crimson, the student newspaper. In the Harvard class of 2019, these are the kids who will be graduating next June, the average SAT score for black students was 2149. By the way, these are all good scores, but for black students, 2149, white students, 2218, Asian students, 2300. Well, now that must be reasonable because it's taking place at Harvard, the seat of reason.
Well, that wasn't quite how I described it when I was there.
Affirmative action. Is that we ought not to be doing this?
There are various laws and policies that benefit one group at the expense of another. But I think affirmative action has the distinction of being one that it harms everybody, though in different ways. And so there's a lot of evidence that there are black kids who have all the qualifications to be successes in college who nevertheless are failures because they are systematically mismatched with institutions whose standards they don't meet, even though they may meet the standards of 80 or 90% of the colleges in America. I remember first aware of this when I was teaching at Cornell, and I found that half the black students at Cornell were on some kind of academic probation. And so I went over to the administration building and looked up the SATs of these students. The average black student at Cornell at that time scored at the 75th percentile.
Which is pretty darn good.
Yes. And so that means that in most colleges in this country, they would have no trouble, and many of them would be on the dean's list. But at Cornell, the average liberal arts student at that time was in the 99th percentile. And when you're teaching the students like that, you teach at a pace that most people of any race cannot keep up with. And it was always complained that I was assigning all kinds of reading. But heck, I'm teaching kids who are in the top 1%. They can keep up with the reading that I'm assigning.
So Cornell was taking very talented black kids and spending 4 years teaching them to feel inadequate.
Yes, and succeeding at that.
How to kill all mosquitoes.
What really stuck out for me was what he said about the government pretty much not paying people for being together, and I see that a lot as far as just like even with couples with a woman, like when she wants to go on, if she's a single mother and she wants to go on welfare, they're gonna take care of her, and then there's also there's other things to it, like that whole independent mindset that kind of gets penetrated into their subconscious through media and things like that, where it's like, oh, I don't need a man, I got this. And to me, that kind of it definitely damages the family structure. So when you look at Asians, Thomas Sowell went in. He went in. He dropped some stuff just now. Asians, they're tight knit. Their culture and overall, it's like the. I was actually just talking to somebody about this. It's like in the Western world, I feel like you gotta just being a man, right? Just being a man. It seems to be a problem. Um, as far as family structure, right? Uh, it's like they don't have those problems, is what I'm trying to say. They don't. They whatever they're doing over there, where their system is working, it has a lot to do with culture. Whereas over here, you pretty much nowadays, I feel like there's an attack on men, but that's kind of another conversation a little bit. But I mean, there's an attack on women and men, but I feel like just being a man, just it's like if you don't accept certain things, um, you're kind of demonized in a sense, and that has a lot to do with the damage of the family structure in the Western world, right? Misunderstood, demonized. Uh, Always everything has to be toxic masculinity, just being a stand up guy, and that doesn't mean controlling. I'm not saying we want to control your partner, but there is a certain respect, like in these other cultures, they know the position that a man is supposed to play. They know the position. They get like they know as a woman there's certain things they can't do that a man can do, and vice versa. And they know how to humble their egos enough to play their parts. Whereas in America, it's always kind of like or in the Western world, this confusion, this debate, I'm independent. I can. Well, then you got the government taking care of you, and then y'all don't need him. And another conversation, but that was the real reason why Asians are more successful than Westerners, and that was Thomas Sowell. You guys, let me know what you think in the comments, and everybody enjoy your day today. Once again, binge watch my history/discussions playlist, and I'll see you all soon. Much love, guys.